Hey guys, welcome back to another Tumbler tutorial. Today I'm going to be working on this neon rainbow. I'm not going to say the trademarked name for it because I don't want to get in trouble. Leopard Swirl Mica Tumbler. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but that's basically it. So this is inspired by Rae Creations. She did this a couple of years ago and I absolutely love this tumbler and thought I would show you guys how I create it and what glitters I use. Now we're going to start off with the epoxy method, and I'm going to just spray paint my tumbler diagonally. You're going to somewhat ombre them. The colors do flow really well together, so it's super easy to get a good blend on them. And just like last weekend, I spray painted this at the same time I did the Dog Mom tumbler, and I used a pink spray paint that was way too dark. So I'm just trying to kind of recoup from that dark spray paint. I had planned on using the Scrunchy 2.0 again for this glitter using the Chase Rae Neon Bundle. But it just was too dark after I put it on the Dog Mom tumbler. So I tried to salvage that, and I used some different glitters to try and brighten it up and give it that neon look. But if you're using the correct spray paint, I would say just use that Scrunchy 2.0 glitter. So I will list all of the glitters that I used in the video as I'm going along. But basically we are just going to do a diagonal rainbow ombre on this. I've gone over those many times. I'll link that in the description box below if you guys want a kind of broken down, slower video description of how to do an ombre. So I'm going to let this play through and I will meet you guys in the next clip. I'm going to let that sit on my drying rack overnight to cure, and the next day I'm going to come in and start working on my leopard spots. I'm going to go over these leopard spots really quickly. 2 weeks ago I did a very kind of intimate one-on-one live in my tutorial on how I do my leopard spots. So if you guys want to watch that, I will link that in the description box as well. That will give you a really good breakdown of how to get the look that I have here in the leopard spots. And basically what we're doing, we are just going to swirl the leopard spots around the cup and making sure that we're not crossing the base color glitter with the same color leopard spot, if that makes sense. So we don't want like a pink leopard spot to land on the pink glitter because then it's not going to be so noticeable. So when you do the leopard spots, just make sure it's kind of offset from the colors. You just don't want them to mesh together. That's the only pointer that I have here that I am really focusing on. I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants with this. I'm going to cover those black outlines with Gentleman. I'm going to let that sit on my drying rack for another couple of hours, and then once that glitter glue is completely dry, I'm going to go over it with a chip brush, brush away any of the excess glitter, make sure that's all tapped off and out of there. We don't want that to cross-contaminate into that neon glitter. Once that glue is dry, we're going to spray seal it and make sure none of that black glitter moves. I use Krylon Triple Thick Spray, and I sprayed it 3 separate times. At this point, we have 1 coat of epoxy on this tumbler. I used probably about 30 to 40 milliliters if I had to guess. Don't really measure out my epoxy because I'm usually doing it in batches, but if I had to guess, I would say anywhere between 30 and 40. So then here we have a second coat of epoxy after that first one was dry, and while the cup is wet, I'm going to just take Gnarly from Peachy Glitters and kind of rub that into my epoxied glove and add that into the tumbler. We're going to make sure that we are applying this glitter in the same direction that the base glitter is swirled in. You don't want it just like clumped up or in an opposite direction. We want everything to flow, and we'll do the same thing with the micas as well. And the reason I'm doing this in wet epoxy is because the chunky glitter, if you're not doing it in wet epoxy, it's going to stand up. It's going to be really sharp. You're going to have to put extra coats of epoxy on it just to make sure that tumbler is smooth. So I always do that and apply it wet when I'm adding anything extra like that. Once the epoxy is dried, after I would say about 6 to 8 hours for fast set or about 12 hours for regular setting epoxy, I'm going to take my Dremel around to the top rim to buff out any pokey glitters that may be sticking up and to expose a fine line of stainless steel for the final coats of epoxy to adhere to. And then I'm going to just take my sanding block and buff it around the entire tumbler in case we have any of the chunky blue glitter sticking up. That will all get buffed down. I'm going to work around the bottom edge as well. And then I'm going to use 91% rubbing alcohol to remove any of that epoxy dust. And then next we're going to go in with our micas. I do not have a clue where I got these micas. They're totally like off brand. I don't even know. But Rae Creations does have a neon mica set as well that goes along with the neon glitter bundles. So if you want to purchase that, I will link the product in the description box with the glitter, as well as the discount code for you guys to use. But we're just going to use one of every color of the rainbow matching our glitters, and I'm using a teeny tiny bit. I cannot stress to you that you hardly need any mica at all. Even what I used was way too much. So probably like maybe like a pinky tip sized amount of mica to probably like 2.5 to 5 milliliters of epoxy. It's hardly anything. So once we get that all mixed up, I'm going to put a thin coat of epoxy on the tumbler again. This is, I believe, coat 3 or 4. I think this is the third coat. And we are going to apply that to the tumbler while it's wet with epoxy. It's not going to apply onto the cup very good if your base of your tumbler is dry. It's just going to get really streaky. It's not going to be like smooth, and you're not going to be able to glide your hand over the tumbler very well. So we're just going to lay these micas down again in the same direction that the glitter is flowing. And as the golden rule goes, you can always add more. You are going to have a really hard time taking it away. So I would start with less mica and just add it if you feel it's necessary. You're really just trying to add to the tumbler a little bit, but you don't want to take away from the base. You don't want to take away from the leopard spots. So keep that in mind when you're applying the micas. They are really pigmented. I can't talk. So I'm going to let this play through again and let you see how I apply these, and I'll see you at the end. Once you've applied your desired amount of mica, you're going to make sure that you're torching this tumbler, but we want to make sure that we are not torching it or heating it too much, because we don't want to start the micas flowing and muddling together. It's not going to look good. We basically want everything to stay where it's at and just kind of cure where it's at. So too much heat, you're going to start getting a lot of swirling and it's just not going to look good. All your colors are going to turn brown because they're all going to combine. So less heat is more here. And then I'm going to do a name. This was a custom order and I measured for a 30 ounce about 6 inches diagonally. I did do an offset on this tumbler. It was 0.050. And then once I put the decal on the tumbler, I put a coat of polyacrylic over it to make sure none of that vinyl lifted. I let that sit for probably about 30 minutes to an hour to dry till it was dry to the touch. And then I'm gonna put about another 30 milliliters of Flynn Sisters regular setting epoxy on at the end as a final coat. I did not need a second coat. And after that's cured, this cup is all finished. So let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already. Hit that bell button for notifications on future tutorials, and I will see you guys next weekend.